Hello, is it live? It looks like it is. Hello, everybody. I'm very glad to see or hear all of you. Actually, I'm not seeing you, but I hope you're seeing me. Sorry for coming to you a couple minutes behind because suddenly the internet connection was pixelating me. I was like a robot and not moving. So we'll see if we can get that fixed up. What we're going to be talking about is robots, not robotic squirrel, which sounds kind of scary actually, but robotic coding from the notion, from the crazy idea that came up only this year. So it's a very new idea of vibe coding. So if you don't know what vibe coding is, but you're curious, you're at the right place. If you think vibe coding is wonderful, you're wrong, and I'm here to tell you why. And if you think vibe coding sounds a little too good to be true, you're right, and I'm here to tell you why. So that's where you are. You're at the right place if you wanted to do any of those things. Welcome to the Squirrel Squadron, of course, my community of tech and non-tech people getting together to talk about topics just like this. So Laura has a nifty little scrolling thing, which I think she might put up for us, our community manager. There they are. So these are the things coming up in the Squirrel Squadron. We have an event on the 13th of November, which is all about my new booklet. This is my old booklet, Squirrel's Tech Radar, but I'm putting out these things pretty regular now, and I have a new one on how to build your software, track your project in a much better way. So if you're wondering whether your software is going to be done, whether it's written by robots or humans, that's the thing to come to. Hint ahead of time, on the 20th, we're doing something on compliance, and the dog agrees. So we're here at home with the guide with Aurora, my 1-year-old golden retriever puppy. So she may have a few things to say. So those are free events. We do those free events as part of the squadron, doing them a little less frequently than we used to. Used to do them every week. Now we're doing them more or less every other week when travel schedule and other things allows. But that's my way of giving back. Talk about all these exciting topics, get people excited, maybe provoked. Somebody called this clickbait. So I'm not trying to clickbait anyone, but I am trying to give you new provocative ideas. So I'll keep trying to do that. Another place to talk about provocative ideas is the Squirrel Squadron Forum. So that operates 24 hours a day, every week. And we have wonderful discussions there. So we have people who were there at the beginning of Agile software development commenting on the outage in AWS on Monday. Some of you might have heard about that. You might have noticed Zoom was down. You might have noticed Snapchat was down. Your kids definitely noticed Snapchat was down. There's probably something new that kids use that isn't Snapchat anymore. I'm not down with the kids. Sorry, I can't help. But lots of things were down. What happened? Why did it happen? What could we do about it? That's a discussion that we're having. We also found some of the best videos from Sora 2, which is another AI tool, completely different from vibe coding. Produces videos of people like Mr. Rogers, the children's host, participating in the Second Punic War. Is this really revolutionary? Is this a new, exciting, fantastic idea, or is it kind of fake news? It's definitely fake, but is it news? So those are topics we're discussing there, and we've got 3,000 people in the squadron from all around the world, every discipline. We got product people, we've got technical people, we've got CEOs, we've got CFOs, COOs, and we're all discussing together without any technobabble what these new developments are, what they mean, how we use them, what we can do to make them most effective. So I hope you're all enjoying that. Now, I would love it, and coming to all those events and talking on the forum, what I'd love to hear from you is what your questions are. So there's a number of you here. I can't always tell how many people come. The sort of dashboard that shows me that isn't usually very accurate. But what I'd love to do is have you enter something in the chat. And just tell me why you're here. What are your questions? What's the issue for you with vibe coding? Do you violently disagree with me? Maybe you came because it was clickbait and you want to argue with me. That would be great. I'd love to have a good old argument. If Roland's here, I know he wants to argue with me, so I'm ready to go with Roland. And others who are here, maybe you're just curious. Maybe you don't know what vibe coding is and you'd like to understand it. Maybe you're not a coder and you want to understand what all these engineers are talking about and whether you can fire all of them because they're suddenly going to be replaced by robots. Hint, no, you can't do that. So I'll explain a lot more about how that works and why. So I can see what you put in the chat. I can also see what people who couldn't come, we got people around the world and this isn't the best time for all of them. So people have sent me questions ahead of time. So I'm going to deal with those questions as well as the ones that you put in the chat now. And feel free also, I love being interrupted. So don't have to wait till I ask a question or something like that. You can write in the chat, you're an idiot, Squirrel, I don't agree. Or, boy, I really agree with that, but I have this other perspective. I'd love to see those things in the chat when you want to, anytime during this talk. Jessica's here, which is fantastic. Always good to have her around. And I know we have a number of other folks. So say hi, ask me questions, use the chat. I can see that. The unfortunate thing about the live stream is it's one way. The fortunate thing is there's lots of you out there, so you can all tell me and discuss with each other all of these exciting topics. Good stuff. All right. So I want to start with something from a guy called Douglas Adams. And some of you may know Mr. Adams as the originator of the 6-part trilogy. Okay, you're getting the sense that he's kind of a weird guy. The 6-part trilogy, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But he actually also wrote some other books, believe it or not. So he didn't only write about the Earth being destroyed on page 3, and then what happened to some survivors afterwards and how they wandered around the universe having very, very funny adventures. But he also wrote about a detective, and the detective's name is Dirk Gently, and I highly recommend these books. They're kind of weird. You have to like this kind of humor, but they're a lot of fun to read. And I want to give you a concept from those. By the way, Laura, we can turn off the scroll now, I think. Thank you. The concept in, I forget which one, I think it's Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul, but I might be remembering wrong. There are 2 Dirk Gently books about this detective who is a holistic detective. And his method, believe me, this is tied to vibe coding, I promise. And this detective solves cases, but not by like looking at clues and getting out his magnifying glass like Sherlock Holmes or somebody like that. No, he solves them holistically. And he often solves them by like going on vacation or something, or wandering off in some crazy direction, and then he meets someone who magically tells him what the result is. It's very funny and a very entertaining take on detective novels and lots of other things that the insane mind of Douglas Adams managed to come up with in his short life. But what happened in one of the books is that Dirk Gently is driving along, and he wants to get somewhere. And instead of consulting, say, a map, this is before GPS and so on, or asking someone how to get where he's going, he uses the art of Zen navigation. And I highly recommend the art of Zen navigation. It really does work. I use it sometimes because I get lost very easily. And what you do is you look for someone who seems to know where they're going. And so he's driving along, sees a car that looks very intent, and the person seems very organized and put together, and he says, I'm going to follow that car. And then he follows that car to wherever it's going. Now, that has no reason, there's no reason to think that that will take you where you are going. But it's very entertaining, and he actually winds up someplace interesting and meets the driver of the car, and guess what? He solves the case by the end of the book. Now, Zen navigation is not exactly a practical method. I would say, for instance, if you are planning to rescue people after an earthquake, I would not use Zen navigation to find the survivors under the rubble. That probably won't work. But Zen navigation is an entertaining way to pass an afternoon, and it often gets you someplace that's useful. And when I get lost in a building, I will often look for someone who's walking with intent. I'll follow that person, maybe even ask them, and they can help me eventually get to someplace where I'm at least interested in being, if not where I'm supposed to be. Now, why on earth am I telling you this crazy long story about Douglas Adams and Dirk Gently and Zen navigation? Because that's what vibe coding is. Okay, so vibe coding is the notion that you can get your AI friend, and we all have friends who are AIs now. We all have robots, right? And we talk to them all the time, or at least some of us do. Some of us even get AI psychosis by talking too much to them and believing what they tell us. My wife, for example, certainly finds it very helpful because she's blind to talk out loud to ChatGPT and have it help her do research on art history, which is what she does. World's only blind art historian. So we're all doing that kind of thing today. And somebody in February, a guy named Karpathy, a reasonably well-known software developer, tweeted this new idea of vibe coding, which is based on this notion of talking with the bot about what the software that you're writing. And he said, you know, I kind of sit back. Actually, I can find the actual tweet here. I did pull it up. Let me see if I can find it. I think I have it. I used to have it. Apologies, but I did want to read it to you. Here it is. So here's what Karpathy said. He said, there's a new kind of coding I call vibe coding, where you fully give in to the vibes, embrace exponentials, and forget that the code even exists. I ask for the dumb, in reading just parts of this, I'm asked for the dumbest things because I'm too lazy to find where they go. I accept all always. I just copy paste it in with no comment. Usually that fixes it. The code grows beyond my usual comprehension. I'd have to really read it. sometimes the LLM can't fix a bug, so I just work around it or ask for random changes until it goes away. It's not too bad for throwaway weekend projects. That's a very important part of the quote, but still quite amusing. I'm building a project or web app, but it's not really coding. I just see stuff, say stuff, run stuff, and copy paste stuff, and it mostly works. Now, if that sounds like Zen navigation to you, you've understood my point. Zen navigation is a great way of getting somewhere. Vibe coding is a great way of getting some piece of software, not necessarily the piece of software that you wanted to get. And so it's very entertaining. If you read if you listen to that original quote, and I encourage you to look up the full tweet, Karpathy is making the point originally as he invents the term that vibe coding is an entertaining weekend activity, not intended for real use, not intended for people to actually produce real software that people use. It's intended to be an entertainment. And some of you might be unfamiliar with this notion. Writing software is really entertaining. It's really fun. If you've never done it, I encourage you to try it out. And there's some really cool tools that let you use these AIs to help you, like Replit and Lovable and so on. And it's really enjoyable. It's a really, it's kind of like making a pot, on a wheel, and you can kind of manipulate it and change it. So I want a thin pot. No, I want a thick pot. Oh, I want to add some clay. And you're making something, and that's joyful. That's a really fun thing to do. Making it the vibe coding way, i.e. just believing whatever the bot tells you, letting the bot do all the work and kind of occasionally asking it for something, is not a very successful method. And so that's my argument today, is that Karpathy invented this term in February. He originally intended it to be a tongue-in-cheek, non-serious, non-real guide to how to write software, just like Zen navigation. Unfortunately, some people took him seriously. So, my book, Agile Conversations, came from Gene Kim and his friends at IT Revolution. I don't know where their name must be on here somewhere. There they are down there, IT Revolution Press. And they are publishing a book right now, I think it's just come out, called Vibe Coding. And it's very serious. It's about how you should vibe code. It's how this is a great idea and why it works well. And I love Gene. I love Gene, but I can't disagree with him more. And there's an awful lot of people spending an awful lot of time talking about how we're all going to just have robots write all our code for us. Those people are wrong. They are WRONG wrong, and I'm going to make that case for you as strongly as I possibly can. However, there's lots of things that robots can do for us. Just like it's useful to walk around and observe other people and watch them in the world. That can help you a lot. It just doesn't help you necessarily get where you want to go. It's a useful, people watching is good. Observing people who are going places and doing things that are interesting, talking to those people, that's all great stuff. It's not a way to get to your destination. Use GPS, right? That's the way to navigate, not Zen navigation. Humorous and entertaining and fun though it may be. Okay, so there's my argument in a nutshell. Now I'm going to make that argument much more clearly and explicitly. But we have a number of people commenting. Oh, Klaus asks, how do you manage multiple live streams? I do that with something called StreamYard. Ask me offline, and I'm happy to tell you how I'm on all these different platforms and so on. Laura does a great job of working on that. Klaus asks a question about vibe coding. You've got 10 devs in the team. You heavily invest in and scale vibe coding. How many devs can you fire? The answer is all of them, because your business will fail. Now, I'm using this definition of vibe coding, this idea that you just kind of sit back. I always say you're sipping a margarita, and you're just kind of tapping occasionally, and you ask the computer to do a few things. You never check any of it. You kind of hope that it works. Your company's headed for disaster if you're writing code that way. And there are engineers who are working that way. They are working in a very unstructured way. They aren't thinking about how to test and guide and work with their software in an effective way. And those people are in trouble. Now, Klaus probably meant, what if we're using AIs to help us build the code? That's a different thing. That's not vibe coding. And that brings me on to a very important point. One thing that I believe very strongly in, that I use in my coaching all the time, is agreeing on what important words mean. And what words mean is really valuable, and it's valuable to defend their actual meaning. So, for example, if you use vibe coding to mean any type of coding that involves AIs, and we're using our chatbots and we're asking them to write some code for us, and we're doing anything at all related to that, well, then you're using it wrong. And the reason that that's a bad thing and going to cause you some trouble is that you're going to confuse people who might have read Karpathy's tweet and they're thinking about this margarita-based coding. And you might have other people, and I'm guessing Klaus might be in this category, who are thinking, yeah, this vibe coding thing, this is where you use AIs. That's any kind of that kind of coding. Those people are not going to have a good conversation because they mean different things. It's as if I went up to you and said, hey, let's navigate to my friend's house, and I start following a random person and you pull out a map. We're not going to have a great collaboration there. We need to have agreement on what the words mean. Let me tell you a few other words that people get wrong, just while we're on the topic, because it's a favorite one of mine. And many of you heard me rant about this before. Refactoring. So engineers love to say, we're refactoring, we're fixing this code, we're making it better, we're doing a good job, we're maintaining our code. But then they spend a month doing the refactoring, or 6 months, or 2 years. Refactoring, if you go and look up the original book by the guy who invented the term, Martin Fowler, is an activity that takes you a few minutes. It's something you can do by changing just one little thing. You commit that change, nothing changes except that your code is easier to read, and then you do a whole series of those. And by tiny, tiny pieces, by tiny, tiny steps, you make your code better. That's what refactoring means. So do not let any engineers tell you they're refactoring if it took them more than 5 minutes. And that definition is, again, very helpful. It's useful to be able to say, I'm doing this series of tiny changes, or I'm rewriting my entire piece of software. One feels a lot more safe and a lot more comfortable, and that's correct. And one feels terrifying, and that's also correct. Because I often come in and help people fix the problems that are caused by trying to tear apart their entire software and rebuild it all from scratch. And people have called that refactoring. They're wrong. Another example is need. So I have engineers or other executives or CEOs or lots of different people. They say, we need to do this. We need to rewrite our software. We need to comply with this regulation. We need to go into China. We need to comply with what our investors ask us to do. Need often doesn't mean that you actually need to. Is there a gun to your head? Are you going to go to jail if you don't do it? Is there a fine? Maybe you could pay the fine. Is there a cost? Maybe you could pay the cost. So it really unlocks people when they don't use need to mean somebody wants me to do it, but they use need to mean there's an actual need. There's a negative outcome when it happens. Vibe coding is just another of these mistakes in terminology. Karpathy's term is great. I'm really glad he came up with the term. Let's defend it. It means sitting back, not paying attention to the details, letting the computer deal with everything, really delegating the entire task to your machine, not a good idea. Does not end well, and I'm going to make that case. We have some more questions. Let me deal with those. So we have Sharik, who says, with vibe coding and AI IDEs, what Sharik means is tools that help you keep track of your code. Those are IDEs, integrated development environments, that use a chatbot. So all of them are incorporating ChatGPT and Claude and all the other beautiful things into their tools, just like Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel and loads of other things are suddenly popping up with little chat windows for you to chat. So he's saying when we do that in software development with our tools, provided there are the right constraints, product managers and product designers now feel empowered to make code changes to the product. Thoughts? Those product managers are in trouble. They are going to cause some problems. However, they've got a great idea. So this is one of these ideas that's kind of in the right direction. You got a good notion there, but you haven't put in place the safeguards, or at least you haven't talked about them. Maybe you have them, and I don't know that. But what I do see over and over and over again is people using these tools like Replit and Lovable, and there's a whole bunch of similar ones that let you crank out really vibe code in the way we're talking about without worrying about a whole lot of technical detail, without being a coder yourself, and you can crank out an app. It'll really run on your phone. You can crank out a web application. You can see something on your screen. We did an event probably 6 months ago in which I vibe coded with a bunch of CEOs and other non-coders. It was really focused. I should do this again. Laura, help me remember. We should do one of these where nobody who's written a line of code is allowed to come. We should make it no coders allowed. Maybe other people could watch, but the goal would be to help them see how to use these tools in a way that's actually helpful, not vibe coding. Because what Sharik said, and he may not have meant this, but what he says is that they feel empowered to make changes to the actual product, to put these things out in the world and have the real changes happen to real customers. That is terrifying. That's as bad as me going to an automobile factory. I know nothing about how cars work. I have one, but I'm not sure I know where the engine is. I kind of know how to make it go. Me going to an automobile factory and adjusting how the carburetors or the pistons or the something else, something that has to do with cars that I don't understand, adjusting those machines and trying to help them, be more efficient or be built faster or who knows what. If I did that, I would produce cars that would crash. I would produce cars that would leak oil, right? I have no idea how to make a car better or improve it under the covers. You might ask me, hey, Squirrel, would you like a faster car? Or would you like a car that has better heating? Would you like a car that cools your seat? Would you like some other kind of mechanism? Would you like it to charge faster? I have an electric car. All that kind of stuff. There are different things that I might have useful input on, just as those product managers do. And coding using these tools can be a way to get that. But it's a feedback mechanism. It's not a software mechanism. Let me underline that. It's something you do to give feedback and to have a better conversation with your engineers. It is not a way to produce actual code that runs in production that real users use. Let me give you an illustration of that being used well, way before we had any of these wonderful tools and AI and all this great stuff. Long ago, I had an engineer in my team, very first software team that I ever worked with. And that engineer came along and said, Squirrel, I'm kind of tired of writing code. I still want to write some, but I want to be a product manager. I want to be the person who decides what our software should do, who it should do it for. I want to go see customers. I said, can I give you a hug? I was really glad this person wanted to make this shift. He was a very clever guy. And he turned out to be an extremely productive product manager. How did he do that? Well, he would come along and he would write a little throwaway piece of code and show that to the engineer. He'd say, I just went and saw 3 customers. All of them want a button that's on the right. It says submit. When you submit it, you get a report. The report looks like this, and he would go through the whole flow. Now, you guys have probably seen people use things like Figma or hand sketches or other things. Those are nice. Those are helpful. Real code trumps that because it shows that you can really do it. Often engineers will say, oh, no, we couldn't do that. That's too difficult. Or they have trouble understanding it. They see it on the Figma or they see it on the design sheet, and then they don't build it right. I've done that more times than I can count as a software developer myself, because I don't always understand design. I don't know what the designers are talking about. I often don't understand the product domain as well as I could. And my product manager is trying to explain it to me, and I don't get it. And I don't build it right. If you can hand a person some actual working code that does what it is you would like it to do, that's what we did at that event a few months ago. We had all those non-technical people building a sales report. They understand sales. They know what sales report should look like. And we built a little chart report with a pie chart and other kinds of things in it. So you could show it to the engineers and you say, you make this code. You can start from this if you want, but you make this code effective, smooth, working well. I'm going to go through the illities that are relevant to that to make sure that it works well. This is a starting place, and it's a very clear starting place. Us engineers, we like things that are black and white, 0 and 1, right? We like, build it like this. This is the answer. Make sure you have it work exactly the way I just built it, because I sat down and made it work, even though I don't understand software. So this is a real breakthrough in communication between product managers and lots of other people, CFOs, customers, loads and loads of different types of people who can now communicate with us what they want to do, and us engineers can understand it because it's code. But we aren't going to use it. We're going to look at it and say, that's pretty scary code that was cranked out by a hallucinating robot that we know makes lots of mistakes, doesn't do things in a scalable or good way, which I'm going to explain in a second. And because we know that, we're going to look at it as an example, and then we're going to throw it away. We're not going to use it. Helpful picture of how it's supposed to be, but it's not what we're going to do. Now, I may be beating up on Sharik here, because I'm not sure if Sharik actually meant it this way. But I just wanted to warn everyone, because there's lots of people doing this. They come along to the engineers and they say, great, I've heard about this stuff, I've seen Squirrel doing the replit. Okay, this is great. I'm going to write the code now. This does not end well. And the engineers send them packing pretty quickly, and they're correct to do so. Okay, Sharik, I hope that was helpful. Feel free to ask more. Yes, Klaus says, Sharik, the devs won't be very happy. So Tom says, over 5-minute refactoring is a redesign. Exactly. Tom, you've understood the meaning of the words. Congratulations for properly understanding what important words mean. And please help me, join me in defending this word refactoring. We may be losing the battle, but I'm going to keep trying, because when people talk about refactoring, they might mean that they're going to go work with their AI tool, and that they're going to spend hours and hours and hours rebuilding the entire software. This is a road to disaster. And I would much rather they talked about making very small changes, because guess what? It's much easier, whether you use a chatbot or your own fingers. It's much easier to make a series of small changes, each of which is accurate and correct and doesn't break your software. Now, that's the point I wanted to make. There's this concept of the illities. You can look this up, and I'm going to write it in one of the chats, and I'm going to ask Laura to help me get it into all of them, because it's a little bit challenging always to get these in. But the word illities is a little hard to say, to think of, to spell and to understand. Illities. I hope I've spelt it correctly. And then I'm going to stick it up here on the screen so you guys can see it. Yeah, there's the word, and it is correctly spelled. Now, it's not really a word. It's kind of a made-up word. But it comes from this idea that we have a number of different things we want our software to do. And all of those things end in the word illities, or the phrase, the letters, the word fragment, illity. So we want scalability. We want reliability. We want maintainability, and there's a whole bunch of others. If you look up illities, I think there's a Wikipedia page with a whole list of lots of different illities, some of which don't end in illity. That's okay. It's the characteristics of our software that our users probably don't think about explicitly. Just like when I go out to buy a car, I might think a little bit about its safety record, but I don't deal with the crumple zones, right? And try to figure out exactly how the airbags work. I don't understand that stuff. And so I rely on the car dealer and the car manufacturer and so on to make sure that they've built a safe car. And I might check out some review that someone's given to verify that that's the way it's supposed to be. But I don't ask, typically, most of us would not ask the car dealer, hey, can you show me a car with 17 airbags positioned exactly like this? And, there's 17.2 centimeters per second squared. Whatever it's supposed to be, that's the domain of these experts who produce the cars. I want to know, does it have enough space for my dog? Is it electric? Will it accelerate fast enough to get out of my small village onto a busy street? Those are the sorts of things that matter to me, and that's what matters to our software customers. They come along to us with demands and requests and requirements and so on for our software that have to do with their needs, and all the other stuff is implicit. Guess what? We trained all those wonderful bots, the ones that are living inside Claude and ChatGPT and so on, the ones that answer our questions and write the code when we're vibe coding. We trained them on what users want. We trained them on what people write about software, what they say about software, how they use software, how the software operates. We didn't train them on how to be scalable, how to be reliable, how to be maintainable, how to be well documented, how to work in an effective way with lots of other pieces of software. Now they're figuring this out. So I wouldn't be surprised if vibe coding has a resurgence in 10 years, maybe even 5. And there'll be at some point at which these tools are really good at building software that handles all the strange cases, that does all the weird stuff that you're not thinking of, that scales well, does not expose your password. Security is another illity, doesn't end in illity, sorry. But securitability, I don't know, maybe that's a new word. The point is that these pieces of software that are produced by the bots don't have these things baked in. And when you use tools like Replit, when you get in there and say, ChatGPT, please write me a script to do this thing, that can be tremendously useful, and you should never share it with anyone else, because they are not ready to deal with this kind of demand. They're not good enough to solve that type of problem. And so what I would strongly encourage you to do is to use the tools. Absolutely, they're wonderful tools. I have a subscription to Replit. I'm going to do another session I just thought up on how to use these kinds of tools for communication, but they are absolutely not ready to produce production-ready, hardened software. Now, there are ways for your engineers to use them that are effective, and I want to talk about that as well. I'm seeing some very successful teams within my client base. There's one wonderful team that I'm going to talk about who have some really excellent methods. Guess what? It does not involve margaritas. It does not involve sitting back and relaxing and listening to music while you just kind of occasionally type stuff and the computer does all the work. It's quite intense work. It's very tiring. It's hard work, and it can be exhausting, but it produces better results faster in many cases. I'm going to ask Laura, and certainly any of you, there's a conversation behind me. If that's distracting or you guys can hear it, please let me know. I'm happy to move or do something else. I had to move to a different location here. So if in any way I'm distracting you or you're not hearing me well, please give a shout. Laura, just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, please, if you're hearing anything else along the way. Laura is very helpful with that. So Laura's giving me a thumbs up. Good, nothing distracting. I hope that's working for you. Now, before I get into how to use these tools really effectively, let me come to questions that people have asked me. There's a few here in the chat, and I want to get to some people asked me in other places, people who couldn't come. Let's see. Jessica says, what's your take on having senior engineers use Cursor, Claude Code, Codex as their team of juniors? Aha, you've been reading my stuff, Jessica. You've anticipated the method, so I am going to get to that. But let me deal with a few other questions that I got along the way. I'm slightly surprised that Roland isn't here because I know one of his questions was, hey, Squirrel, I'm using vibe coding and it's working great for me. And what I want to do is explain to Roland, I'll explain to you what his question was and then why he's not doing it. So he says he created an iPhone app from scratch. It's got all the features he wants. This is a very long question. I'm just summarizing. It's been useful since day one. He's only occasionally looked at the code. But then he goes into what he did in order to produce this. He has a very extensive rules file. These are things you might have heard of called system prompts. And there's other tools and things that you can put in to tell the bot, the AI, where its guidelines are. You're allowed to be here, but not be there. You're allowed to write this kind of code, but not that kind of code. And so he's written a whole complicated file to keep track of that. Doesn't involve any margaritas, you notice. He's the product owner. He describes small problems. He makes very small changes one at a time. He gets a new demo every 5 to 30 minutes. These are all very good mechanisms for not doing vibe coding. Vibe coding would be, oh yeah, I hope it works. I'm just going to play around, sip my margarita and off we go. That's not what Roland is doing. He says he would still describe this as vibe coding. Roland, you're wrong. Go read Karpathy's original tweet. That's not what he means. And so I think this is a very valuable thing to do that Roland is describing. And I'm going to go into more detail about some of the structures that people put in place, response to Jessica's question as well. That there's lots of things you can do to be very effective at writing code using AIs. They're not vibe coding, right? Code that goes to production should not be vibe coded in Karpathy's sense. So Roland, you're welcome to disagree with me. I think you might be watching the recording. So all of you who are watching the recording, please comment on the forum, have a further discussion about this, write me an email. I'd love to hear opposing views and to have an interesting and helpful debate about it. Let's see. So let's see if we can get a question. I want to come back to Richard's question later. Oh, here's an interesting one. Will says, who are you seeing being most and least enthusiastic about the newest tools? Well, the very interesting thing is it's the same people. So there are some very senior people who have been writing code for 30, 40, 50 years in some cases, gray hair, battle scars, the whole 9 yards. And some of those folks are dead set against any of these new things. They're newfangled stuff. Kids, get off my lawn, really not ready for it. They say it's not good enough. And to some extent, they're right, as I've just been arguing. And there are others who say, my God, I wish I'd had this 30 years ago. It can work in all these ancient programming languages that only I know. And now I finally have someone to work with. Engineers do something called rubber ducking. You get yourself a rubber duck, literally, and you describe your problem to your rubber duck. Guess what? You solve your problem a lot of times. The rubber duck doesn't actually help you, except it's forced to listen. And by describing it, you get a better sense. They use the tools as a rubber duck. So there are senior folks who both hate it and love it. And guess what? Absolutely the same is true of folks coming straight out of university, because the poor universities are trying to catch up. I really don't envy all these professors who have to deal with kids coming to lecture, talking to ChatGPT while they're listening, and then using ChatGPT to write their essays and their code and who knows what else. That sounds like a very challenging situation. I remember when I taught at university, at least I didn't have that problem. But the kids coming from university have been playing with all these tools. So they're kind of native in them, which means some of them are really good. And some of them really know the clever stuff to do, like what Roland was describing for us, the rules files and the other methods and the mechanisms for making it really effective. Well, gosh, some of those young kids are also saying, this isn't how I learned it at university. Why are you forcing me to do all this new, complicated, difficult stuff? I'd like to do it just like I did it for my professor, please. And the professor, of course, hasn't come to the new world and it isn't teaching them the new methods, because universities usually take a while to get up to speed. So, Will, I wish I had better news for you. I wish I could say, it's this type of person. These are exactly the people who are doing the best. It's really up and down. It's really quite a variety of sorts of people who both accept and don't accept, and there's no consistency to it. I will make an argument in a few minutes for more senior people, and that's unfortunate for our graduates. Not quite clear how we're going to get senior people in the future if the bots do all the junior work. This is a challenge for the industry. But I don't see any particular class or group or type of engineer or non-engineer who adopts or doesn't adopt it. It's really what your background is seems to control it. Let's see. Oh, Roland says he's here. Excellent, but he's not arguing with me. So I guess that means Roland agrees with everything I say. Excellent. Thank you, Roland. Perfect endorsement from Roland. I'm kidding. Please argue with me. And let's see if I had any other questions. I want to come back to Richard's for sure, but after we do this, so let me switch back to my nice list. Xenon asks, Xenon, it's wonderful to see you here. Xenon asks, has anyone used vibe coding to create a viable and maintainable solution? If you think of one, then do at it. Well, Roland responded to that and described his, but of course he wasn't vibe coding, at least according to Karpathy's definition, which I am insisting is the correct one. So Xenon, I haven't seen anyone produce that, but I'd be equally interested. So if you have actually used vibe coding and you've produced something that really you use and it's valuable and it's helpful, I would love to hear it. But I haven't seen anybody who can, hand on heart, say I've done the Karpathy type of vibe coding. I sat back with a stiff drink and listening to loud music, and I played around and I got something that was useful. I would like to see such a thing. That would be very valuable. But Xenon, I haven't seen it. And the reason is the ones we've been talking about. These tools are not up to snuff. They're not capable of producing a sustained, complicated solution to a tough technical problem that deals with all the illities that are not explicit in what you're asking them to do. And so they produce software with holes. You can think of it like Swiss cheese. Swiss cheese is kind of nice. Emmental, I have some in the fridge. I like having a slice of Emmental now and then. But would I want to, rely on it as a basis for my foundation of my house? Well, probably not. It's full of holes, right? I can hold it up and look through it. And it really does not work in specific areas the way I would like it to. And similar for code produced through vibe coding. So I hope those are hopeful answers. Let me talk about something more positive. I've been bashing vibe coding for 45 minutes. I better say something positive about something, although it's not going to be vibe coding. And the positive thing I'm going to say is that if you are very careful and thoughtful about how you produce your software, then you can actually get a tremendous speed boost from your engineers. I have one anecdotal story from a company that's a conglomerate. They have many, many companies in their group. And this company has been rolling out very carefully and thoughtfully and slower than, just handing it out to everybody. But of these thousands of companies, they picked a few and they've said, you go use this and you go use this. And so they're gradually going through each. And they are getting up to a 90% speed up in their engineers, getting much more efficiency from them and being able to work with very old code, because that's their situation. They buy kind of older software companies with code that's very mature, meaning kind of smelly. It doesn't work that well and there's problems and it's difficult to maintain. And they hand that to the AI in these better ways, which I'm going to describe. And they can use fewer engineers to do more work. And those engineers are getting more done per engineer. That's why they can get these improvements. I have another client in the Baltics in a really heavily impacted industry. Their industry kind of took a nosedive at a certain moment. There was some bad news in their world, and a lot of their customers disappeared and or stopped buying software. And so they said, look, we're either going to die or we're going to find some way to be twice as efficient. I think we'll be twice as efficient. So they said, what could we use? They said, well, this AI stuff seems to work. Let's try it out. And again, they used these techniques to get very significant speed up. And what they found is they can operate with half their, they unfortunately had to fire half their engineers. Remaining half have become as productive, if not more, than the ones who have to leave. I'm not advocating firing half your engineering staff, by the way, before anybody worries that I'm on an execution path here. But what I'm suggesting is that you can make those that you have much more efficient. You probably can hire fewer than you think you need to. And by using these tools in the right way, not vibe coding, you can get tremendous speed ups and improvement. Okay, now I've been foreshadowing that for a bit. I am going to go into it, but Roland has a comment. Roland says, we disagree about the definition of the term. What he's doing certainly feels like vibe coding. It feels like I'm vibing. Of course, I didn't actually go into this. I'm no expert on teen slang, but apparently vibing is sort of a chill. It's like what we used to call chilling. In the 1960s, they probably would have called it hanging out or being cool or something. I don't know. But it's that kind of ill-defined notion of being really relaxed and just enjoying life and not being under any stress or pressure. So I think that's what Roland is describing. So when he's writing this code, he's in that kind of vibe state. He's relaxed. He's not feeling under pressure. He's not pushing himself. Mostly the fact that I've had zero input into the code. So he's asking for things by prompting the piece of software, the bot, to produce for him the code that he would like. I couldn't if I tried, as I don't know Swift. So he actually doesn't know the programming language. This is one of the advantages you can get, is that you can have people who know less about. I wouldn't put this stuff in production, Roland, so I'd be a little careful. I wouldn't want to trust, say, my nuclear power plant or even less, my email or something, to code that had been written by a bot supervised by a human who did not know the programming language. I would think there would be some problems in that, and that's what I've seen. Roland, you're welcome to tell me I'm wrong. But certainly he's getting useful software in a programming language he doesn't know, and he does agree that the original definition, if we use that, doesn't match what he's doing. Okay, so I'm just going to keep defending the original definition because I think that needs a name. It's too easy to fall into, and it is dangerous and the sort of thing you want to only do for fun and entertainment. And I think what you're doing is slightly entertainment because it's not a vital app. It's not launching spaceships or something, but it is useful to you. And you didn't use vibe coding because what you were doing was you did a lot of work up front to produce the rules, to learn about the software, the tool that you're using to make it work. And you did a number of other things to provide guidelines and barriers that kept the code working the way you want to, even in a programming language you don't know. So that's a tremendous achievement. I think you should be very proud of it. Just stop calling it vibe coding because it's not. All right. So having responded to that, and I'm sure Roland will come back and argue with me some more. It's always very entertaining. Let me tell you what this method looks like and where to look for more of it. And so if you search for a term I invented, the software atelier, you'll find articles on that. If you have trouble, just ask me in the forum or elsewhere. And I'm going to stick that up here in the chat on the screen and so on. So you might not probably know this first word, software, but you probably don't know this word atelier unless you're French. And if you're French, I think what it means is workshop. I'm not great with French, but I'm pretty sure I've got that right. And an atelier is a term, in this case, that I'm using it, from art history. And so you will sometimes see, if you go to an art gallery, that a piece of art on the wall is from the studio of Leonardo da Vinci or from the studio of Rembrandt. And if you've ever wondered what that means, what it means is there was a studio, an atelier, a workshop that had a bunch of students and journeymen and people like that who were working with the artist. And those people produced a lot of the detail and a lot of the little kind of workmanlike pieces of the art. And the artist produced some part of it, maybe just the design, maybe painted the difficult parts like the mouths or the eyes or something else, some crucial part of the portrait. But the person who did most of the work, the people who did most of the work, are the students, are the people in the factory, in the atelier, in the workshop. And the reason that's important and interesting is that that's worked for hundreds and hundreds of years. Damien Hirst, a modern artist, produces art that is a whole bunch of dots, modern art, who knows, always use abstract things. And he tells all his students where to put the dots. But he doesn't make any dots himself. His brush never touched the canvas. He still signs it. Guess what? He gets the money when you buy one of these. And what he's doing there is making use of, and this is exactly what Jessica was asking about, he's making use of a bunch of lower skilled folks in his workshop to do work with him and to do the work that he doesn't feel like doing and that he can automate to some extent by having human beings do it. Guess what? You can do exactly the same with these chatbots, with these large language models. And I'm very pleased to see that this is starting to make its way into the integrated development environments. Simon Williamson wrote about this quite recently, and I put it on the forum, so you can go check that out. And what you're doing feels like juggling. It feels like if you've ever managed a team that needed a lot of interaction, you might go to see one of them and help them with something, and then go to the next one right after that, and then go to the third one. You get tired at the end of the day because you're running around from one desk to the next saying, do it this way, change that, do the other thing. But you can multiply your own efforts quite substantially, because while I'm helping number 2, numbers 1 and 3 and 5 and 7 are all doing some really cool thing. And then I go off to help number 6, and then number 2 is productive again, and so on. So I'm getting a lot more out of them by dividing my effort in guiding them. And that's what you can do, very similar to what Roland has described in his one case. So he was doing one of these. He was supervising an atelier with just one member in it, if I understand him right. But you can do that with multiple ones. And so you can have one that might be specialized, and some of these are starting to get better at certain things, or we're observing and learning. It's very, very new. Which tools are better, which large language models have proclivities or abilities in certain areas. And so you might have one do some research for you and try out a bunch of different libraries and tools. And you might have another one building an authentication page for you from a standard set of templates. And then you might have another one fixing a bug. And you kind of go from one to the next. And as one is doing its work, and these things take a little while to churn through and do their thing, you go to another one. And when you do this kind of thing, you really do multiply your productivity. Guess what? This is another thing I mentioned before. You need senior people to do this. Someone straight from university has great trouble with it. There are the few who are kind of native, and they're really trying this stuff out now. I predict we'll have some of those who will turn out to be real geniuses and super capable in this area. But most folks are not, especially straight out of university, because it's hard enough to keep track of your own work and keep track of all the illities and remember, oh yes, I need security here. I need to make it scalable here. I need to make reliability over here. Keeping track of all that is very difficult for a very junior person. So in both of the cases that I described where people are getting huge productivity gains, what they have done is relied on senior folks, given them plenty of time to learn how these tools work, helped them with guidelines and tools and the other kinds of things that Roland was describing that he was using. And by giving them all of this support and help in learning and enough time to learn it, it's not something you pick up overnight, they're getting very, very substantial productivity gains. So if you're looking for getting that kind of gain, if you want to save money on your engineering team and you want to make use of these tools, the most important thing I can tell you is get senior folks who are in that flexible camp, like I was telling Will. I said, there's some senior folks who dig their heels in and say, no, I'm never going to accept this. Good for them. I'm sure there's a place for them, and I don't share their opinion, but they're welcome to it. You don't want to hire them for this. Instead, you want to hire senior people who are excited about it, who are playing with it, who are trying out these methods, and who say, yeah, I'm interested in doing more of this. Yes, I use multiple agents. I use multiple tools, multiple chatbots to help me as I work, and I want to improve in that. I want to do more of that. And then get some people to help you. I know folks who do that. I do some of that myself. But get advisors to come who can help you and your team to master these tools and use them in a very effective way. And then keep up with all the things that happen, because there's new stuff happening every week in this area. So if you want very substantial productivity gains for your technology team, they're out there, but not through vibe coding. That's why I say it's failed. Jessica has a further question. Are there Squirrel-approved IDE vibe coder rules you recommend we implement? I don't have very specific ones, Jessica. That would be a great topic for the forum. I'd love it if you post that, because Roland clearly has some. Maybe he'd share his rules file and he'd tell us a little bit about how he did it. And there are several other folks on the forum who are doing this stuff every day. As you know, I spend most of my time coaching and helping executives to put in place these tools and so on. So I'm robbed of the opportunity to go and vibe code myself and try out things and build my own rules files and try this. So I don't have as much very specifically from myself, but the community will have it. So I'd love for you to post that if you don't mind. And I'll encourage some of those folks to come along and give us some of their ideas. Guess what? Those ideas may be wrong a week from now. So whatever you hear, be ready for it to change very, very quickly, because there are new tools coming out all the time, new techniques. People are inventing new phrases like vibe coding and inventing this method as we're using it. So don't be surprised if you get an answer which then is out of date in a few weeks. But certainly the community can help you, and I'm happy to help look. I think that would be a great resource. Tools and methods that are actually working. I hate to say it, I wouldn't go and buy Gene Kim's book because although I'm sure it's chock full of great ideas, he wrote it 6 months ago. And I don't know how he could possibly keep it up to date with new and emerging techniques. So look elsewhere. I wouldn't go to books. I would look for the forum and other locations, and please do ask. Now, I did before I finished, and my puppy's barking again. Laura will tell me if that's too distracting, or any of you are welcome to tell me, and I can invite the puppy to go somewhere else. But she's just excited about software ateliers and using software, using LLMs in a more effective way. There was a question I wanted to come back to. So Richard asked, are there any good ways for AI to help with refactoring without making a mess? Now, of course, Richard asked that before we had a discussion about the meaning of the word refactoring. I'm going to assume that Richard means one or the other of the meanings. Either he's talking about little tiny changes, you can make a whole series of them, which AI is really good at, I've seen, or he's talking about this kind of bigger change, which I would really call rewriting or redesigning, as I think Tom was mentioning in the chat. So in both cases, AI can be very effective, but in different ways. So for tiny little changes and making small improvements as you go, just sitting down with any of these tools, Codex and Claude Code, and I'm forgetting what the other one is. There's a number of these, Cursor. There's a whole bunch of different tools. Pick the one that you like. They're all pretty much the same, but different in small ways. And you pick one of those and you tell it to make a tiny change and commit that change. And usually you have to check it. You have to be sure that it's doing the right thing. But usually it will make that small change effectively, and it will clean up your code. And if you do a whole bunch of those and you check it each time, you can get more productivity, and certainly it's less exhausting. It's less sort of grunt work to make a whole series of tiny changes that make your code better. You could think of that, if you're not a coder, as like doing spell check on a novel, or doing a sort of grammar check or an editing check, or having a copy editor look through your novel, because you're finding a whole bunch of small things. You spelled this wrong. This needs a comma. There's a semicolon that goes here. You haven't put a quote mark here. This word would be, it's better to say fast than speedy. There would be all kinds of different changes that the copy editor or the spell checker would tell you, and you can make each one individually. And so if you're working that way, I still wouldn't vibe code, because I want you checking that code very carefully. Sometimes the machine will not do what you asked it to do. But it's usually pretty good at that, and that's usually pretty safe because each check is small and easy to check. If you have a massive rebuild to do, if you're working on something that takes days and days or weeks and weeks, or God forbid, months and months, then I would be working the atelier way. So I'd be getting senior people. I'd be giving them really great tools, excellent training, super coaches to help them, really good mechanisms and methods, and very similar to the kinds of things that Roland and Jessica have been talking about. And as they worked with those, I would direct them at the problem of rebuilding or changing or updating whatever it is, making the large change that you want to make. Of course, I would ask them to do that in small pieces. That's my elephant carpaccio method. I've talked about that a lot. And any really good senior developer will know to do these things in smaller pieces, but those pieces will be bigger than these tiny, tiny changes, the real refactorings. And as the senior developer is using the AI to do them, the senior developer can use it to do multiple ones. So you might say, update all the usages of this library to conform to this standard. And that might take a while to define, just like Roland's rules file took a while to create. But once you've got it, then you can set the machine off, and it is kind of grinding along doing that change all the way through. At the same time, you have another AI over here, and you ask it to start using a new library. And you ask it to replace all the places where you called X and instead you call Y, again, you have to define for it what all those rules are. Once you define that, you can set it working. And then you go to the third one and the fourth one. And so you can get a lot more out of one senior engineer who's able to juggle in this way. Also get them a nice place to nap, because this stuff is very tiring. Those of you who have ever done pairing, or if you've known engineers who do pairing, this is where two human beings sit next to each other and write code together. You have to allow time for breaks, because you're on all the time. You're interacting with the other person. There's human interaction. There's computer interaction. There's lots of thinking to do, and it's very tiring. It's one of the main things that you need to do if you want to use pairing, which is another great way to get productivity gains out of your tech team. But this AI coding, this atelier method, is even more exhausting because you have several of, it's not just two, it's not two people, it's you and a bunch of bots. And you really need to take breaks and make sure that you have plenty of coffee on hand and lots of opportunities for engineers to rest their brains, because there's a lot of thinking going on. So I hope that's helpful to Richard. I gave him a provocative answer to his question, whichever way he might have meant it, because he wasn't here to hear us define refactoring the right way. And I don't see any more questions. So I think we're at the time we'd planned, and I hope this has been provocative and interesting. I don't think I've convinced Roland that I have the right definition of vibe coding, but he's still wrong, and that's okay, because we're old friends. And those of you who are sticking to this incorrect but increasingly used definition, I hope I've given you at least a little pause, so the next time you write vibe, you'll think, oh, maybe I should call it something else. Maybe what I'm actually doing is a little more thoughtful. Maybe it's a little more careful, and I should tell people that so they don't think what I'm doing is sitting back with a margarita. Get more credit for what you're doing, because it's actually really valuable. For example, Roland's given us beautiful examples, and I hope he'll share some of them on the forum. I'd love to see you on the forum commenting on this, commenting on current events. Maybe StreamYard will go down and you'll comment on that. There's lots of things happening in the software world, and I love talking about them with software and non-software people on the Squirrel Squadron forum. Even more than that, I'd love to see you at a future event. We have one launching my book on the glide path method, high visibility delivery. That's coming on November 13th, I think. Check Squirrel Squadron to see exactly when. The dog's so excited she can't stop, and so I better go pay attention to her. But it's lovely to see all of you. I hope to see you at future events and on the forum, and have a fantastic vibing day.